As I said, we're going to take a look tonight at the 1947 Negro League World Series, which took place 75 years ago last month between the Cleveland Buckeyes and the New York Cubans. Now, entering 1947, the Negro Leagues were enjoying unprecedented stability and prosperity. In the East, you had the Negro National League, founded in 1933, 6 teams in 7 cities, mostly along the eastern seaboard, Homestead Grays splitting their time between Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. And in the Midwest and South, there was the Negro American League, founded 10 years earlier, also a 6-team circuit, also in 7 cities, the Clowns splitting their time between Cincinnati and Indianapolis. 1947 was the 4th season in a row in which these 12 teams made up the 2 leagues, which was unheard of stability for Negro League baseball. But 1947, of course, would be a year of seismic change. Just before the end of spring training, the Brooklyn Dodgers made Jackie Robinson the first Black major leaguer since Moses Fleetwood Walker 63 years earlier. Jackie's success with the Dodgers changed baseball and changed America. And though it wasn't understood at the time, the integration of the major leagues sounded a death knell for the Negro Leagues. This here is the top of the sports section of the Pittsburgh Courier, June of 1945. Banner headline about the Homestead Grays and Birmingham Black Barons, Negro League statistics and standings, and stories of other black ball action. Now, that same newspaper 2 years later, during Jackie Robinson's rookie year with Brooklyn. The headlines about Jackie and the Dodgers. The stats and standings have been replaced with the Robinson box score. There's even a ghost-written article on the right, Jackie Robinson says. Further down the page, we can read about Jackie being named Negro Father of the Year. And down in the bottom corner, next to an advertisement for the Electric Light Jazz bow tie, you'll find 2 paragraphs about a series between the Newark Eagles and New York Cubans. In July, the Cleveland Indians purchased Larry Doby from the Newark Eagles, integrating the American League. A week later, the Black Cleveland Call and Post ran a front-page photo spread documenting Doby's every move, coverage that earlier might have been spent on the city's first-place Buckeyes. By the end of 1947, 5 Black players had reached the major leagues. There was no turning back for neither Major League Baseball nor the Negro Leagues, which swiftly declined in popularity and relevance. Which is a shame because a very entertaining season was playing out. At the time of Doby's signing, the Cleveland Buckeyes were outpacing the defending champion Birmingham Black Barons and perennial contenders Kansas City Monarchs in the Negro American League, while in the Negro National League, the Newark Eagles, 1946 World Series winners, were neck and neck with a fine New York Cuban ball club. The Buckeyes, led by their star Sam Jethro, held off the challengers to claim their second NAL title in 3 years. While in the NNL, Newark faded after selling Doby to the Indians, and the Cubans became New York City's first pennant winner of the Negro League era. The regular season ended at the start of September, followed by a couple of weeks of interleague exhibitions before the World Series. During this interlude, the 2 pennant winners faced each other in Buffalo and split a pair of games in a World Series preview. 2 weeks after that, on September 19th at the Polo Grounds in New York, the Buckeyes and Cubans met in the opening game of the 1947 Negro World Series. We're going to take a closer look now at the 2 ball clubs. The Cleveland Buckeyes were the 11th Negro League team to call the Lake Erie City home. Most of the previous 10 lasted just 1 season, none played more than 2, but the Buckeyes succeeded where the others failed. Founded in 1942 as the Cincinnati Cleveland Buckeyes, they made Cleveland their permanent home 1 year later. They split their games between League Park and Cleveland Stadium, the 2 homes of the Major League Indians. The Buckeyes won their first NAL pennant in 1945, then upset the Homestead Grays in 4 straight to claim the Negro League championship. After a disappointing third-place finish in 46, they reclaimed the pennant with many of the same players who won the crown in 1945. This is Cleveland's typical batting order during the 47 World Series. The team's star was center fielder and leadoff hitter Sam the Jet Jethro, 30-year-old switch hitter. And the statistics at Seam Heads for wins above replacement ranked Sam Jethro second during his career in the Negro American League behind Hall of Famer Willard Home Run Brown. He was a Buckeye since their first season in 42, starting center fielder for the West in 4 East-West games, joined Jackie Robinson and Marvin Williams in a sham tryout with the Boston Red Sox in April in 45, and later that year led the Buckeyes to their World Series sweep of Homestead. Batting second, Archie Ware, 29-year-old first baseman. Like Jethro, a Buckeye since 1942 and a regular on the 45 champions. A slick fielding contact hitter, starting all-star first baseman for the West, 44, 45, and 46. Batting third, third baseman Leon Kelman, a 28-year-old from Gatun, Panama. He was a superstar in the Panamanian Winter League, where he usually played catcher. Kelman joined the Buckeyes after the war in 46. He was a solid hitter with extra base power. In the cleanup spot, Joe Atkins, 25-year-old outfielder third baseman, joined the Buckeyes from the Pittsburgh Crawfords of Branch Rickey's short-lived United States League. Atkins was the Buckeyes' one real home run threat in the batting order. Batting fifth, Willie Grace, 30-year-old switch hitter, a Buckeye since 43, another solid batter in the lineup. He took over for an AWOL Lloyd Davenport in the 45 World Series and wound up one of the hitting stars of the Buckeye sweep of the mighty Grays. Grace was the starting right fielder for the 1946 East-West game. Batting sixth, Quincy Troop, 34-year-old catcher and team manager, born Christmas Day, 1912. Troop's vagabond career makes him one of the more difficult blackball stars to evaluate. He debuted with his hometown St. Louis Stars as a 17-year-old in 1930, and after that played in the Negro National League, East-West League, Negro American League, Mexican League, barnstormed independently with the Kansas City Monarchs, spent 2 years as Satchel Paige's teammate on an integrated semi-pro team in Bismarck, North Dakota, joined Cleveland in 1945 as catcher and manager, and promptly led the team to a World Series championship. He was also a hell of a ball player, a hell of a hitter. You take the 10 years, 1938 to 1947, and he compiled a 926 on-base plus slugging over those 10 years, which ranks 13th amongst all black hitters and second among catchers, behind Josh Gibson and ahead of Roy Campanella. Batting seventh, Al Fuzzy Smith, 19-year-old shortstop, signed by the Buckeyes a year earlier after graduating from high school in St. Louis. Number 8, Johnny Cowan, second baseman, 34-year-old from Alabama, who broke into blackball with the Birmingham Black Barons, joined the Buckeyes in their inaugural season in 1942, another mainstay of the 45 champions, a good field, no-hit second baseman. On the bench, there was at least one and possibly two Jesse Williamses. Pictured here is Jesse Sharon Williams from Meriden, Mississippi. Most sources identify him as a catcher, but on Seamheads.com, he's an outfielder, and there's a catcher named Jesse F. Williams, birthplace unknown, no photograph. The Baseball Heritage Museum has a team photo of the 47 Buckeyes that identifies Jesse Williams, Clyde Williams, and a third Williams without a first name. That might be this mysterious catcher, Jesse. In the event, this outfielder, Jesse Sharon Williams, was the only Jesse Williams to appear in the World Series. Clyde Nelson was a handy bench player who could play all the corner infield and corner outfield positions. Chicago American Giant for 3 years, representing that team in the 1946 East-West game. 47 is Nelson's first year with the Buckeyes. On a pitching staff without a true ace starter, you had Eugene Smith, veteran fastball slider pitcher. He joined the Buckeyes late in the season from the Homestead Grays, and like so many others, missed 3 prime seasons of his career serving in the Army in World War II. Gene Bremer was a New Orleans native, a 4-time All-Star. Over the first 10 years of the Negro American League's existence, Bremer ranks second in wins, behind Hilton Smith and ahead of Satchel Paige. In September of 42, Bremer suffered a skull fracture and concussion in the car crash that killed Buckeyes Buster Brown and Smokey Owens, but he recovered to continue his fine career. He threw an overhand curve from a no windup delivery and was a gold glove quality fielder on the mound. 40-year-old right-hander Chet Brewer was nearing the end of a long and successful career. He spent a dozen years as the ace of the Kansas City Monarchs and once lost a legendary pitcher's duel to Smokey Joe Williams, where the two pitchers combined for 46 strikeouts in 12 innings. He pitched to Quincy Troop for that integrated team in North Dakota, pitched for Trujillo's All-Stars in Santo Domingo in 1937, was the first Black American in the Mexican League, and pitched in 2 East-West games. Brewer was a finesse pitcher with a large repertoire of deliveries, joined the Buckeyes in 1946. Webo Clark was a 19-year-old rookie southpaw from Panama. Herbert Doc Bracken went 13-1 for the Great Lakes Naval Station Black Blue Jackets during World War II, where he was a teammate of Larry Doby's. After the war, there was a bidding war for his services, which the Cleveland Buckeyes won. The Fireballer struck out over 6 batters per 9 innings, but unfortunately walked an equal amount. In 1947, Doc Bracken played under the name Alfredo Bragana in an ill-fated attempt at passing as Puerto Rican to get into organized baseball. He appears as Bragana in box scores and newspaper articles during the World Series. Ross Satchel Davis was a 28-year-old right-hander whose budding career had been interrupted by World War II. And Toothpick Sam Jones was a 21-year-old rookie who threw hard but was very wild. Now we'll take a look at the New York Cubans. For over 30 years, Alejandro Alex Pompez owned and operated an East Coast team of predominantly Latin players, known by several different names over the years. In the 1920s, they were the Cuban Stars and members of the Eastern Colored League and American Negro League. Since 1935, Pompey's rechristened New York Cubans were members of the Second Negro National League. Though the roster changed frequently, Pompey's connections in his native Cuba and throughout Latin America ensured a solid lineup featuring some of the brightest stars in blackball. While they were regular contenders, 1947 marked the Cubans franchise's first Negro League pennant. And it's important to remember when talking about any of these Cuban ball clubs, that for Latin American players, the Negro Leagues were an off-season barnstorming tour. In their homelands, in the winter leagues, they were stars. They had their pictures on baseball cards. People knew them. Those were the teams that most of these players considered their real ball club. And the Cubans was something they did in the off-season. Managing that team, 51-year-old Jose Maria Fernandez, a mainstay of Pompey's Cubans teams since their beginning in 1916, first as an excellent defensive catcher and later as manager. This vastly underrated figure also played 24 winters in his native Cuba, where he batted over 309 times. He was elected to the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame in exile in 1965. Like the Buckeyes, the Cubans' biggest star was their leadoff hitter, a sensational 21-year-old named Saturnino Orestes Armas Miñoso Arrieta, better known as Minnie Miñoso. He's in his second season in New York, starting third baseman for the East in the 1947 East-West game, and his .915 OPS, according to Scene Heads, ranks second in the Negro National League. 23-year-old Cuban Fernando Diaz Pedroso, who can be found in reference materials under either last name, was a very fast runner, but usually not much of a hitter. His nickname was El Bicho, which is literally the bug. But when I Googled it, I found there are several vulgar alternative meanings that I won't get into here. The number 3 hitter, 27-year-old Lorenzo Cabrera. His nickname was Chiquitín, which means tiny or little boy, and was probably ironic because he was a big, hard-hitting left-handed first baseman. His Cuban League career had been interrupted by World War II. 1947 was the 27-year-old's first season in the United States. Cleanup hitter Silvio Garcia was a big star in Latin America, usually on the hitting leaderboards in the Mexican League and Cuban League. The 33-year-old Cuban native broke in as a 17-year-old pitcher and moved to shortstop after an arm injury. He joined the New York Cubans in 1946 and played in the East-West game both of his seasons with the club. 6'2", 215-pound Claro Duane was nicknamed El Gigante, the Giant. He was slow-footed and a defensive liability, but the man could hit. In the previous 3 seasons of the Cuban League, Duane won 2 batting titles and a home run crown. He led the 1945 Mexican League in batting average, hits, doubles, and runs batted in, and added the second batting championship in that league in '46. Duane played for the New York Cubans for 1 season in 1944 and returned in '47, where he made the East-West team. Batting 6th, 28-year-old Cuban catcher Rafael Rey Noble, a New York Cuban since 1945, strong-armed catcher, solid hitter with good power. 27-year-old Cleveland Clark, another Cuban native, was a speedy and graceful center fielder. His nickname was Chiflan, which means to be crazy about something, also to whistle or boo. Horacio Rabbit Martinez was probably the first great Dominican shortstop, a defensive wizard but weak at the plate. New York Cuban off and on since their founding in 1935, represented that team in 4 East-West games. He's 34 years old in 1947 and had moved to second base a year earlier when Silvio Garcia joined the Cubans. Years later, Rabbit Martinez scouted for the New York and San Francisco Giants and was responsible for the first wave of Dominican major leaguers, including Juan Marichal, the Alou brothers, and Manny Mota. On the bench, 27-year-old Lou Loudon, catcher from Virginia, split the playing time behind the plate with Rey Noble. Loudon was a product of New York City playgrounds discovered by Alex Pompez in 1942, and an East-West game selection in '46 and '47. Mario Ariosa was a promising 21-year-old rookie and part-timer who joined New York after hitting .296 in the Cuban League the previous winter. Ace of the pitching staff, wearing uniform number 1, Dave Barnhill, 33-year-old from North Carolina. Barnhill stood only 5'6", 168 pounds, but was a flamethrower who averaged over 6 strikeouts per 9 innings. Led the Cuban League in strikeouts in '40-41 and joined the New York Cubans that spring. a gate attraction who engaged in some famous showdowns with Satchel Paige, including the 1943 East-West game, one of Barnhill's 3 East-West appearances. Barnhill got his start in blackball with gimmicky teams like the Ethiopian Clowns and Zulu Giants in the late 30s. His clown name was Impo, and that stuck with him as his nickname for the rest of his career. Luis Lefty Tiant was a 40-year-old from Havana. 5'10", 150 pounds, also nicknamed Sir Skinny. Tiant was a crafty junk baller with an excellent screwball and an even better pickoff move. According to James Riley, he once struck out a batter while throwing to first base. Tiant was a regular participant in the Cuban League and with Cuban stars in New York Cubans teams in the U.S. His sterling record in 1947 earned him his second East-West game appearance and first since 1935. He's the father, of course, of Louis Tiant Jr., El Tiante, who starred on the mound for Cleveland and Boston in the 1960s and 70s. And I remember Lefty Tiant from NBC's coverage of the 1975 World Series. Fidel Castro gave the elder Tiant special dispensation to leave Cuba for the United States and see his son pitch for the Red Sox in the World Series. And NBC's cameras frequently captured the joyous old man celebrating in the stands. Back to the pitching staff, Barney Morris, 37-year-old from Shreveport, Louisiana, known as Big Ad. Another one of those Depression-era vagabonds. He was Quincy Troop's teammate in North Dakota, with the Kansas City Monarchs, and with Monterey in the Mexican League. Morris's bread and butter was a knuckleball he threw as hard as his fastball. New York Cuban since 1942, pitched in 2 East-West games, led the Cuban League in wins in 1939-40. Lino Galata Donoso. I love saying that name. He was a 25-year-old hurler from Havana, joined New York this year after a promising rookie season in the Cuban Winter League. Patricio Athelstan Scantlebury was a 29-year-old southpaw from Gatun, Panama, the same hometown as Buckeyes Leon Coleman. A Cuban since 1944, he also played in the Cuban and Puerto Rican Winter Leagues. Martin Crew was a 27-year-old left-hander from Mobile, Alabama, who featured on the back end of New York Cubans pitching staffs since 1942. Now, with all that context behind us, let's proceed with the games of the 1947 Negro World Series between the Cleveland Buckeyes and the New York Cubans. Game 1 on a Friday night at the Cubans' home park, the Polo Grounds in New York, a pair of veteran aces, Chet Brewer and Dave Barnhill. Cleveland took a 5-0 lead in the second on Johnny Cowan's 3-run homer off reliever Pat Scantlebury. But Silvio Garcia helped New York tie the game, hitting a single, double, and homer in his first 3 trips to the plate. The game was called due to rain after 6 innings, a 5-5 tie. For Cleveland, 5 runs, 7 hits, 1 error. New York, 5 runs, 8 hits, 3 errors. 2 days later, on Sunday afternoon, the teams met at Yankee Stadium. Vibert Clark on the mound for Cleveland, Louis Tiant for New York. And Tiant faced just 4 batters before being knocked out of the box by a flurry of Buckeye hits. Leon Kelman's double and Joe Atkins' triple helped put Cleveland in front 3-0. The Cubans responded by driving Vibert Clark out of the game before he'd retired a batter. Doc Bracken came on in relief and skillfully pitched out of a no-out, bases-loaded jam to hold the New Yorkers to 2 runs. A single, 3 doubles, and triples by Al Smith and Bracken netted the Buckeyes 4 runs in the 4th. But Smith committed 2 errors and Bracken balked in a run as New York tallied 4 in the bottom half to tie things at 7. In the 6th, Cuban shortstop Silvio Garcia singled, extending his home hitting streak to 22 straight games. Still tied at 7, Cleveland's Archie Ware leads off the top of the ninth with an infield single off New York reliever Lino Donoso. Leon Kelman singled, his 4th hit of the day. Then Joe Atkins walked to load the bases with nobody out. Donoso then proceeded to retire Willie Grace and Quincy Troop. Bases still loaded, 2 outs. But Al Smith and Johnny Cowan connected for back-to-back singles to put Cleveland up by 3. Bracken retired the Cubans quietly in the bottom of the ninth to preserve the Buckeyes' win. For Cleveland, 10 runs, 17 hits, and 4 errors. For the Cubans, 7 runs, 10 hits, and 3 errors. The winning pitcher was Doc Bracken. Of course, the newspapers said it was Alfredo Bragana. The losing pitcher was Lino Donoso, and Cleveland takes a 1-0 lead in the series. The teams were scheduled to play in Shibe Park in Philadelphia Monday night, but rain postponed that contest until later in the week. Instead, the series resumed Tuesday night in cavernous and mostly empty Cleveland Stadium. Barney Morris on the mound against Eugene Smith. And through 7 innings, both starters were throwing shutouts. Sam Jones replaced Eugene Smith in the 8th, but the game remained scoreless. Minnie Minoso led off the Cubans' 9th by doubling to left field. Fernando Diaz fanned for the first out, then Lorenzo Cabrera walked. Silvio Garcia's base hit brought home Minoso with the game's first run. Claro Doani followed with an RBI single to right. When Lou Loudon walked to load the bases, the Buckeyes brought Satchel Davis in from the pen to replace Sam Jones. Davis proceeded to walk Rabbit Martinez to force in the Cubans' 3rd run. Cleveland Clark reached on an error by shortstop Al Smith. Doani scored on the play, but Loudon was thrown out trying to score for the 2nd out of the inning. And the New York pitcher Barney Morris capped off the inning with a single to right, making it 6-0 Cubans. Morris went on to complete the shutout. His outstanding pitching line, 9 innings, 5 hits, no runs, no walks, 6 strikeouts. For the Cubans, 6 runs, 12 hits, no errors. The Buckeyes, no runs, 5 hits, 1 error. Winning pitcher Barney Morris, the loser Toothpick Sam Jones. The series returned to Philadelphia Wednesday night for Game 4, knotted at 1-1 plus the 1 tie. Gene Bremer for Cleveland, Dave Barnhill making his 2nd start of the series for New York. In a game that received minimal newspaper coverage, Ray Noble hit a grand slam onto Shibe Park's left field roof to lead New York to a 9-4 win. For the Cubans, 9 runs, 12 hits, no errors. The Buckeyes, 4 runs, 7 hits, 4 errors. Winning pitcher Impo Barnhill, the loser was Gene Bremer. We go to Game 5, Friday night in Chicago. The Cubans have a 2-1 lead in the series. Chet Brewer opposing Lino Donoso. And Donoso scattered 7 hits in the Cubans' 9-2 victory. Rabbit Martinez starred defensively, twice robbing Johnny Cowan of line drive singles. For the Cubans, 9 runs, 14 hits, and 1 error. For Cleveland, 2 runs, 7 hits, and another 4 errors, giving them 14 through 5 games. Lino Donoso got the win, bringing his record to 1-1 in the series. Chet Brewer took the loss. And to give you a sense of how anonymous this World Series was, researchers are yet to find a box score of this contest. In fact, 1947 was the only one of the 11 editions of the Negro World Series for which we have no play-by-play accounts for any of the games. On Saturday, the series returned to Cleveland, League Park this time, with the Cubans up 3-1 and needing just 1 victory to claim the title. Louis Tiant opposing Eugene Smith. And Lefty Tiant was again knocked out early, making way for Pat Scantlebury after giving up 3 runs in the first 2 innings. Tiant's record for the series, 2 games started, 2 1/3 inning pitched, 6 runs scored. We don't know earned from unearned runs, but it becomes a run average of 23.14 for the series. Silvio Garcia was ejected in the 4th for loudly protesting an umpire's decision. And after 5, the Buckeyes led 5-0. Willie Grace drove in the first 4 runs with a single and a double. But the Cubans came back with 3 runs in the 6th. Cleveland second baseman Johnny Cowan committed errors on consecutive plays during the rally. In the 8th, Ray Noble put the Cubans on top with a 2 RBI double. And Pat Scantlebury shut out the Bucks over the last 4 frames to seal the win. For the Cubans, 6 runs, 8 hits, and 4 errors. For the Buckeyes, 5 runs, 9 hits, and 4 errors. Pat Scantlebury, the winning pitcher, Eugene Smith, the loser. And as the headline reads, the New York Cubans win the Negro World Series. It was New York City's first and only Negro League championship, and the only title won by any of the iterations of the Cuban Stars teams in the Negro Leagues. The Cubans averaged 7 runs per game, outscoring the Buckeyes 42-26, and profited from Cleveland's 18 errors over the 6 games. Statistics from the series are incomplete because of that missing game in Chicago, so we don't know exactly who the statistical leaders are. But for the games we do have, the leading regulars in the slash line stats are this pair of Buckeyes, Leon Kelman and Al Smith. The leading hitters for the Cubans were Lorenzo Cabrera, Claro Duani, and Silvio Garcia. No pitcher won multiple games in the series, but the best pitching performance was Barney Morris's Game 3 shutout. And my choice for World Series most valuable player is Cubans catcher Ray Noble. Though he split playing time behind the plate with Lou Loudon, he had a huge impact on the series, hitting a grand slam in the Cubans' 9-4 winning in Game 4, and the series-winning RBI double in Game 6, plus a gaudy slash line as a part-timer of 400, 500, 800, 1300. Now a different set of statistics, and these always depress me. This chart compares attendances for the Negro League and Major League World Series in 1947. And as you see, the average white World Series game drew 55,000 plus, which is more than double the number of people who attended all 6 games of the Black World Series combined. Because of the presence of Jackie Robinson in the previously all-white World Series, this disparity was even reflected in the coverage given by Black newspapers. This is the front page of the October 4th Cleveland Call and Post. Banner headline, Jackie Robinson stars in series games, photos of Jackie in action. On the front page of the sports section, the lead story is an editorial poem entitled Dreams Come True, Jackie in World Series. And down on the right, buried behind coverage of Black players in professional football, is the article detailing the Cubans' victory over the Buckeyes, which suggests that the real legacy of the 1947 Negro League World Series can be found in the stories of what its participants moved on to in baseball's newly integrated landscape. But first, let's acknowledge a trio of pitchers who were born too soon to take advantage of the new opportunities. Louis Tiant, Chet Brewer, and Barney Morris were certainly major league talents who could have starred in an integrated major leagues. But in 1947, they were all between the ages of 37 and 40, too old to be of any interest to white scouts. These 7 players, Mario Ariosa, Lorenzo Cabrera, Claro Duani, Silvio Garcia, Leon Kelman, and Lou Loudon, chose to extend their careers in the racially friendlier Mexican League. Lorenzo Cabrera led the Mexican League in hitting in 1950, and Mario Ariosa, who was a 21-year-old part-timer with the 47 Cubans, would win 2 batting titles and a home run crown in the Mexican League in the 1950s. He's enshrined today in the Salón de la Fama, the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame. These four Buckeyes, Joe Atkins, Gene Bremer, Willie Grace, and Archie Ware, played in the lower levels of minor league baseball. And Dave Imbo Barnhill made it as far as the New York Giants' top farm club, the Minneapolis Millers of the American Association, where he was a teammate of a young Willie Mays. Barnhill won 11 and lost 3 for the Millers in 1950, and probably only stayed in the minors because of the racial quotas employed by major league teams in the early days of integration. And that leaves these 9 veterans of the 1947 Negro League World Series who reached the promised land of Major League Baseball. The first of them was also the best. Minnie Minoso was the Cubans' 21-year-old third baseman and leadoff hitter in 1947. In 1949, he debuted with the Cleveland Indians. Little used in Cleveland, he was traded in 1951 to the Chicago White Sox, for whom he became a franchise legend and one of the best outfielders in the American League. With cameo appearances with the White Sox in 1976 and 1980 at the ages of 52 and 56, Minoso became the Major League's only 5-decade player. And this past summer, at long last, Minnie Minoso found his rightful place amongst the sports immortals with his enshrinement in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The second 1947 vet to reach the major leagues was the Buckeyes' brightest star, leadoff hitter Sam the Jet Jethro. Jethro was 33 years old when he made his Boston Braves debut, which was ancient for a ball player whose primary weapon was speed. But Jethro was still good enough to be selected National League Rookie of the Year in 1950 and led the league in stolen bases each of his first 2 seasons. He would end his professional career in 1958 with Toronto in the International League, for whom he'd managed 24 stolen bases as a 40-year-old. Cuban catcher Ray Noble, my selection for series' most valuable player, would spend parts of 3 seasons with the New York Giants in 1951. In October of that season, he came off the bench to catch the final inning of the famous Bobby Thompson home run game. Noble would continue playing at the AAA level until he was 42 years old. In 1947, Toothpick Sam Jones was a raw 21-year-old pitching hopeful. He would debut with Cleveland Indians in 1951, but spent most of his time in the high minors until a 1955 trade to the Cubs. That season, Jones became the first African-American to throw a no-hitter in the major leagues, pitched in the All-Star game, and true to form, led the National League in strikeouts, walks, and hit batsmen. The high point of Jones's 12-year major league career came in 1959, when he led the National League with 21 wins and a 2.83 ERA while pitching for the San Francisco Giants. He finished second to the White Sox early win in the Cy Young Award voting that year, and would have won the National League Cy Young if they'd awarded one in each league as they do today. Excuse me. In January 1948, just 4 months after the World Series, the Cleveland Buckeyes inexplicably sold catcher and manager Quincy Troup to the Chicago American Giants. After a season in Chicago, he would serve as player manager for an independent minor league team in Quebec and for Jalisco in the Mexican League. In 1952, at the age of 39, Troup was finally given a crack at the major leagues. He played in 6 games over a 3-month span with the Cleveland Indians before being optioned to Indianapolis of the American Association. Troup talks about his disappointment with these events in his excellent autobiography, 20 Years Too Soon. After a brilliant 22-year career, Troup was told by Indians general manager Hank Greenberg he was being farmed out because, quote, "one thing you don't have is a record that we can go on." In that autobiography, Troup also spoke of his young teammate Al Smith and the promising future he had as a major leaguer. Smith debuted with the Indians in 1953, a year after Troup, and enjoyed a 12-year major league career with Cleveland and the White Sox. A two-time All-Star, Smith is best known for having a beer dumped on his head by an over-exuberant White Sox fan during Game 2 of the 1959 World Series. Lino Galata Donoso would pitch for the Cubans for 47 to 49, then spent 4 solid seasons in the Mexican League, winning the earned run average crown in 1951. He joined organized ball in 1954 with Hollywood in the Pacific Coast League. His 19-8 record and 2.37 earned run average with the Stars earned Donoso a major league call-up with the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1955, a rookie at the age of 32. He won 4 and lost 6 in 2 seasons with the cellar-dwelling Pirates, then returned to Mexico, where he would continue pitching until 1962. He was elected to the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame in 1988. Panamanian Webo Clark, 19 years old with the 47 Buckeyes, would stay in the Negro Leagues until 1955, then joined Charlotte in organized baseball Sally League, where he went 16-12 and earned a September call-up with the Washington Senators. He pitched in 7 games for the Senators that month with neither a win nor a loss, then returned to the minor leagues for 2 more seasons before calling it a career. Our final major league debutante was Panamanian southpaw Pat Scantlebury, who shaved 8 years off his true age to get a chance at organized ball in 1953. In 1956, after several strong minor league seasons, the 38-year-old Scantlebury got called up by the Cincinnati Reds, for whom he pitched 6 games before returning to the International League for the rest of his career. By 1956, Scantlebury's rookie season, there were 33 veterans of Negro League Baseball playing in the previously all-white major leagues, including, highlighted in yellow, 8 future Hall of Famers. More tellingly, there were 7 young African Americans in the major leagues that season who had been signed directly into organized baseball and had never played in the major leagues. And that's the ultimate legacy of Negro League Baseball. It succeeded so well in elevating Black baseball that it made itself obsolete. Among my sources for this presentation, Dick Clark and Larry Lester's Negro League book, Tom Dunkel's excellent colorblind about that independent team, integrated team in North Dakota. Highly recommend that. Who's Who in Cuban Baseball, Larry Lester's Black Baseball in New York City, the Negro League books too, James Riley's indispensable biographical encyclopedia, History of the Mexican League, and Quincy Troop's aforementioned autobiography. Websites referred to include retrosheet.org, the Sabre Biography Project and Games Project, and the Negro Leagues Up Close at homeplatedontmove.wordpress.com. The statistics all came from Seam Heads, and the newspaper clippings came from the resources at the Cleveland Public Library and my subscription to newspapers.com.